Hello, guys. The lecture that I'm going to go over today, some of you saw part of this in class, so you'll have to skip ahead to where we left off. But I know the A group did not see at this point. So we're talking about the start of statehood, and the call for statehood in Oklahoma Territory was persistent. And if we look at the numbers, Indian Territory starts with 61,000 in 1890. In Oklahoma, 197,000. And if you look, by 1907, those numbers have jumped tremendously. Okay, they both almost double in 7 years. The Oklahoma Territory more than doubles, and Indian Territory almost doubles. Are these groups coming in to Indian Territory going to be Native Americans? They're not. And so if you look, the 61,000, those are going to be your 5 tribes. And then you're going to see these numbers just boom. Each time there was a new land opening, the population grew tremendously. Leaders of the 5 tribes opposed joining Indian Territory and Oklahoma Territory. So this is where you get the idea for the state of Sequoyah. You guys have already done a reading and a video over the state of Sequoyah, but basically the idea was to create 2 separate states, and they thought it would be better for the 5 tribes for them to remain separate with Indian Territory. In 1905, the 5 tribes called for a constitutional convention in order to create that new state, and they were able to actually write a constitution that looks very similar to the U.S. Constitution, 3 branches of government, a system of checks and balances. And after it was approved by the delegates, they sent it to Congress. And Congress decided to table the discussion, okay? To table it in favor of discussing unification of the 2 states. The Enabling Act, or also called the Hamilton Statehood Bill in 1906, provided for joining the twin territories together. It required people to organize a government similar to other states. The Constitution would have to forbid liquor in Indian Territory and the Osage Nation, So it had to forbid liquor in those 5 tribes areas. And then had established religious freedom, prohibit polygamy, which is the marriage of one man with multiple women. The reason for that is because of the movement of the Mormons, and they had been being forced out of the east and were headed west. So they wanted to make sure this new territory did not allow polygamy to occur. Guarantee all races the right to vote. We know that that doesn't hold true as time went on. And establish free public schools for all students. Guthrie was to remain the capital until 1913, and at that time it could be moved. 112 delegates met on November 6, 1906 to debate the matter, but there was no women or blacks present in this meeting. At the time, 77 counties would be organized. Okay, the progressive movement, I've talked about this in class. It was very popular at the time, and Oklahoma actually benefits from this larger movement across the nation. The development of the state of Oklahoma at the same time that the progressive movement is going on means Oklahoma kind of got to be the the experiment. Let's see how this law works here. Let's see how this works in Oklahoma, because they are a new state and they can try it without having to make major changes to their constitution. We'll just put it directly in there. Supporters believe that government could best solve the problems of society. And you see this movement because of the growth of big business during the industrial period and how we have all these businesses grow, but on the backs of the workers. They wanted to break up or regulate large businesses such as the railroads, and they supported an income tax and a greater amount of say in government by the people. So less state-run government and more people voting. This has to do with the Senate, because up to this point, the Senate was chosen. The state legislature would vote on who should be the U.S. senators to represent our state, each state across the nation. And this was a change that people wanted. They wanted everybody to be able to vote on who their senator was. Up till 1900, the Senate was often called the $1 Million Club, because the more money you had, the more you could spend on someone else's political campaign in order to help them get elected to the state legislature, and they would then nominate you to the U.S. Senate. So it was often considered to be the $1 Million Club. 3 branches of government were set up with a system of checks and balances. Most state officials were elected by the people, including the governor, and there was a 2-house bicameral legislature. So in Oklahoma, we have a state Senate and a state Congress. The plan was for the legislature to have more power than the governor, who could serve for only 1 4-year term at that time. Citizens could propose a law or a constitutional amendment called an initiative. And that's still true today. You have the right to propose your own law or initiative, and sometimes those do become laws. All right, for a moment, I want to go back and talk about why the 5 tribes did not get to have their own state. And what was happening here is it becomes very political in the respect that after the Civil War, leading up to the Civil War, they kept trying to keep a balance of slave states and free states. And remember, the dividing line was Oklahoma's northern border. And so getting 2 more states that would most likely be Southern Democrats was a problem for the Northern Republicans. And so they fought against it and basically stopped the development of the 2 states. Today, we can look at that and say, well, was that a good thing for the Native Americans? I don't know. We can't imagine imagine Oklahoma being 2 states. We only can see it as 1. But it might have been a good thing. But that was the reason, is they wanted to block it. Oh, that was it. A labor and arbitration committee wrote laws to shorten the workday to 8 hours in mines and public works projects. Labor unions often had a slogan of 8 hours of work, 8 hours of play, 8 hours of rest. But they had been working 12 to 16 hours a day. So this was a big change, and Oklahoma got it written into the Constitution. Convict labor would be prohibited. Children under 15 could not be employed in hazardous work. Boys had to be 16 in order to work in the mines. The Constitution would call for free public schools not affiliated with any religious group. It had to be a public school. And children ages 8 to 16 were required to attend school. So you can see that age right there is much older than we send kids to school today. Alcohol was legal in Oklahoma Territory, but not in Indian Territory. This is going to be a problem. Many disagreed with the laws on both sides. The women's Christian temperance movement was a powerful force at the time, and it worked to outlaw alcohol use. And it was difficult to change laws in the eastern states that were already well established. But if you could get in and try to make headway as this new state was beginning, you could change the face of the state. You could change the law. Carrie Nation is a very well-known woman who led the Prohibition campaign in Kansas and Oklahoma. She tore down saloons, broke mirrors, and smashed liquor bottles. Many European immigrants wanted to keep alcohol legal since it was a part of their culture. The Constitutional Convention decided to leave the issue to a vote of the people. And we know in 1919, I believe, 1920, we get the 18th Amendment, which is the Prohibition Amendment, and it becomes illegal to buy, sell, or transport liquor here in the United States anywhere. And that is repealed later in the 1930s with the 21st Amendment. Suffrage. Suffrage is the right to vote. Statehood was discussed at the same time that women's suffrage movement was active. Southern Democrats did not want women to have the right to vote because they thought that would encourage black voters. And they were trying to prohibit the blacks from voting. So if we allow women to vote, then we're going to have to allow the blacks to vote, and we don't want that. Paupers, felons, women, and mentally incapable were not allowed to vote. A pauper is someone who is extremely poor, and a felon is someone who has been convicted of a crime. And I think you know the others. African Americans wanted to escape the Jim Crow laws of the South. Those are the laws that were made just to keep African Americans from partaking in their constitutional rights. They were created just to keep them from being able to vote or go to school and such things. Some delegates of the convention wanted to add Jim Crow provisions on segregation to the Constitution. The matter was tabled until statehood. All corporations had to be chartered by the state. They could not influence political campaigns or own stock in competing firms. Records were subject to state inspection. This is still true. And large businesses were to be regulated by an elected corporation commission. And that still exists today. All right, ratification. A very long constitution was completed after several months. It was considered very progressive, but was later criticized for being inflexible. It was accepted by popular vote on September 17, 1907. Charles N. Haskell, a Democrat, would be elected as the governor. And the Prohibition Amendment passed, so there was no alcohol in Oklahoma before the Prohibition Amendment earlier. 5 congressional representatives were elected, but senators could not be elected until statehood and the meeting of the legislature. So this goes back to the legislature actually picking the senators. And I believe that is the 17th Amendment that changes it to where the people vote. It's either the 16th or the 17th, and the other one is about income tax. So statehood proclaimed. November 16th, 1907, President Theodore Roosevelt signs the Statehood Proclamation. Great celebrations began in Guthrie, and Haskell was sworn in as the governor. A symbolic marriage of Mr. Oklahoma Territory to Miss Indian Territory was held for the 46th state. Its population was 1,414,177. Many Indians felt betrayed that the new state wiped out their identity. So basically, this new state was based on white man laws, based on European ideals and how to govern, and not on the ideas of the 5 tribes. All right, that's all for today. Do your CER for Wednesday, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about, I just was thinking about it. About how Guthrie doesn't get to stay the capital. Have a good break. Bye.